Hi all, for our bonus notable game today, I'd like to show you an amazing game played at the European Cup, which is currently underway. This was in round 2. Hikaru Nakamura was playing black. He had recently won the Millionaire Open, which we looked at some of his excellent games on the channel already for that. So he was probably very happy, and then flying to this European Cup after. His opponent is quite dangerous, he's beaten him before, but Nakamura currently, before this game, was 2-1. His opponent, Yannick Pelletier, 10 years before this game, Pelletier had beaten Nakamura in a King's Engine defense. And here we have a repeat of the King's Engine defense. D4 was played by Yannick Pelletier. Before we go into the game, I'll just say Pelletier is a 39-year-old from Switzerland. He was born in Biel, Switzerland, a GM since 2001, 5 times Swiss champion 1995, 2000, 2002, 2010 and 2014, and a regular on his country's Olympiad team. He also represents Switzerland annually at the Strong Biel Chess Festival, where he has managed wins against Magnus Carlsen, Ruslan Ponomariov and Viktor Korchnoi, among others. His best ELO rating 2624 was achieved in January 2003. In 2008, he was announced as a participant in FIDE's inaugural Grand Prix cycle as the nominee of the hosting city of Montreal. So, yes, a dangerous opponent because he has actually beaten Nakamura before. So knight f6 from Nakamura, c4, g6, and we enter into the King's Engine defense, a favourite of Nakamura, and in particular we have the aggressive bayonet attack system, this aggressive early b4 here. It's getting to be, well, in this position it is the most popular move. After that is knight e1. So b4, trying to strike at the base of black's pawn chain, the exploitable base, which is d6 immediately. Black tries to delay this with a5. And now we have bishop a3, main move. The main move here apparently is to take on b4. So for example like this, bishop takes b4. This position, where it's meant to be a small advantage for white, carrying on a bit like this. White enjoys a small advantage here a lot of the time. Now in the game, Nakamura played actually slightly rarer, still nearly 200 games, b6, and white took on a5, and black usually doesn't recapture because that's a tempo gainer. If black recaptures, then it's either a tempo gainer with bishop b4 or maybe even sometimes like this, but bishop b4 is the most obvious, and then white can play for the queenside attack, trying to hit the chain there. So okay, the most usual move is not to recapture here but to play knight h5, so using that pin to slow white down. That's the idea behind this. Pawn's pinned, right? We have knight d2. Often also rook e1 is played. Now knight f4. Now interestingly here, knight b3 is like the main move. There's 8 games in live book with knight b3 in this position. For example, knight b3, black taking like this, knight takes, and maybe there's even bishop a6 on this diagonal, or f5 here, for example. But in this game, we have an extraordinary move, which I think will be a good candidate for theoretical novelty of the year 2015, in the King's Engine defense at least. Let's restrict its scope. In the King's Engine defense, I haven't seen too many major opening novelties. Can you guess what white plays here? Yannick Pelletier. And this doesn't seem to be an ordinary engine move. I've stretched out all the candidate moves Stockfish would think of in this position. It doesn't actually find this that easily at all. I had difficulty finding it prompted. Can you guess what white plays if I give you 5 seconds? Starting from now, you might want to pause the video. And actually, I'll give you a clue of some sort, not a major clue. Sometimes we talk about evaluation of positions, and I've recently mentioned about the trend of evaluations. Now let's link the concept of the trend, the evaluation trend, with positions which might be easier to play, because the two might be linked, the two concepts. When we think of positions that are easier to play as humans, does that give us an idea of trend? You might have passed pawns, for example. They increase in strength as they go up the board, so there's obviously a trend upwards. So think about that. That's my clue to you. What on earth did White play here? It's astonishing if you haven't seen this game yet. Absolutely astonishing. 5 seconds just from now then. Okay, it's not been seen before. A takes b6. Yes, the assumption was that this pawn was pinned to the bishop, right? Incredible. Incredible. It can't be tolerated not to take the bishop, surely, because it's pointing at d6. If here, then surely we can just play knight b5, supporting the bishop and hitting d6. So Nakamura takes the bishop. Why not? Knight b5. Hitting the rook and also hitting c7. White's going to get another pawn. Perhaps best was rook a8, apparently, but Black played rook a5, which seems sensible to give options of rook takes b5 sometimes, if Black wants to counter sacrifice. B takes c7. Let's look at this position after the queen moves. So White is sacrificing a whole piece here, a whole bishop, quite a few pawns for 3 pawns. Now this is why I mentioned about trends, because actually if White can get these pawns going, like this a pawn, then the trend will be in White's favour. The easy to playness of the position is also linked to that. You think about passed pawns, they're sometimes easy to play, but here we seem a bit far off from having connected passed pawns or anything, aren't we? The thing is, after a4, White is pushing forward already, knight b3 to unblockade, which may be why rook a8 might theoretically have been better. This game has to be put on the great analysis, but if rook a8, this knight b3, you could argue is not as dangerous. We have bishop a6, knight b3, and White is welcoming the departure of his c-pawn here. After bishop takes b5, White has 2 main choices here to be the exchange up, taking or taking here. But actually it does seem better to take with the c-pawn. That gives White 2 connected passed pawns with an upward trend. This easy to playness is linked with the notion of the upward trend of evaluation. And here the engines warm up to White's position as well. They might still need us humans to say, well, the position looks easier to play. Look, passed pawns, can't you see that? The engine says, no, all I can see is 1s and 0s. But here, look, the passed pawns. It's easy to play, even if this one needs to be sacrificed. The other way of playing this is not as effective, it seems. Knight takes, the bishop can lurk here. And this position is actually, you know, not so bad. Or this one. Instead of knight b3, bishop f3. Well, the knight's holding that, but queen takes. This isn't so bad. I think Black's got things like this, and it has a kind of blockade. It's only, look, it's only 2 pawns. They're not connected together. So this idea of connected passed pawns is an important concept. The way it was played here gets these connected passed pawns, which we know as humans, you know, they're lovely to play with. They're enjoyable to play with. I love connected passed pawns. I'm sure we all do. As they advance down the board, it makes the position easy to play. Can Nakamura, who's like rank 2 in the world, defend against these 2 connected passed pawns? I had 2 lovely connected passed pawns the other night, in fact, just this week. I hope you check that out on the channel, kingscrusher over the board. So here, I know the feeling. It's nice to have 2 connected passed pawns. You haven't lived if you haven't had these passed pawns. So not on chess, you need them. Knight takes a5, queen takes a5. Now the knight's kicked away from that aggressive f4 square. Is it going to take on e2? It does actually take on e2 here. Black might want to try and sacrifice another pawn if white wants to take that, but there's other options as well. But that looks like a load of pawns. So black just takes on e2. This bishop could be a useful supporting role for the passed pawns anyway. Can Nakamura defend this position? What is white actually threatening? Well, one thing white's threatening is to take this c-file. So black tries to discourage the use of the c-file. But the rook goes behind the pawn. Rook b8. And now white shows willingness to depart with certain pawns for the advancement of the others. White now plays b6. What a dynamic game by white. If this is not taking, you know, maybe white's going to like continue with rook b5, and it'll be a very simple case of marching these to the end. The knight and bishop are over here, they're not going to help. So that pawn is snapped up. We're left with just one passed pawn now. a5, queen c5. The pawn is not pushed here, even though that might be quite good. Rook a4 just says to black, oh, I've got an option also of queen c4 in this position coming up, as well as a6. Seems very difficult to play this position. What does black do? King g7, a6, knight c8, trying to blockade at a7. But now we have this resource, rook c4, skewering the queen and knight. It's defended with a counter pin, but now an unpinning resource, which also means the pawn might be being pushed, and there's dual threats. While rook takes c8 is now threatened. The knight moves, but now we have rook c6, and we've really now got rook takes b6 on the cards for a7, and the pawn's going to be queening. So we see knight a4 from Nakamura, a7. Things are getting out of hand here with just that one single pawn. Queen a5, looking maybe at a check, maybe to take here. That'd be a nuisance. The king gets out of the way, and even lets this pawn go tactically. What a move. So now if queen e1, trying to go for this, or well, there's rook c4 on there. If queen b4, or just taking would protect e4. So Nakamura just takes on a7. But now, of course, it runs into rook c4. So all of white's pawns were wiped out there on the a, b and c files. But white is going to be the exchange up. Equal on pawns now, but the exchange up. What can the knight do? It pins. It's going to be eliminated. The exchange up. Rook b4. Queen c6. Now winning a pawn. Yes, it's a difficult position. What does black do? He's going to be losing d6. It's very difficult to try and defend this position. So anyway, we see queen a7, queen takes d6, trying for this last little tactical idea, bishop e7. But after queen takes e5, it becomes clear that black's lost. Nakamura actually resigns. He doesn't play this on. The most incisive after f6 would seem to be not queen d4, because then there might be bishop c5, but that's still very good for white. But much cleaner, just to maintain the exchange up, would be queen b8 in this position, attacking black's queen. White's just the exchange up and a pawn up. So yeah, after f6, Nakamura resigned with this move. It's a shocker. It's an opening shocker. It's showing actually our engines are not even picking up on these potentially winning moves that can defeat players in the top 10 of our world human rating list. We need to think about how we analyze opening theory and not perhaps be restricted by engine evaluations, and take into account forcing moves especially, which seems to lead into positions which are simply easier to play in some respect, and take it from there. Is there an upward trend on these sort of moves that might lose material, but you get these positions that are easy to play, and that shows the huge dynamic potential of chess that maybe we're just starting to explore. You know, the dynamics of the game in terms of opening theory. Even in 2015, we're just newcomers really to what opening theory could actually be very useful to us. Now, clinically, you could argue, well, the engines are not enamoured by this novelty. They're not impressed, because they'll argue, well, Rook A8, and you know, black seems to be slightly better, but the humans looking at the position will look at the passed pawns and think, well, the passed pawns have potential. So it's a big argument here between trends and the evaluation, future potential and the current evaluation. This is the thing in Superman, when the supercomputer was defeated. This fluid, which was highly volatile, full of dynamic potential, was underestimated by the mainframe computer, if you remember one of your Superman films, the classic. Yeah, what can we say about this game? Novelty of the year, I would say, for the King's Indian Defence. I've not seen any greater novelty than this one. And this means that Yannick is actually 2-all with Nakamura. Fantastic score to have against the world number 2. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.